critical focus channel.
Let us tackle yet another warband coming in from the cold of a non-competitive play. It is the Mistwalkers of Algu. The Shadeborn enters, and it's time for you to put your sneaky boots on and look for cover. The Shadeborn were all about the cover hexes, and pretty much every fighter card, mechanic and card in their deck had it as a theme. Let us visit the new war scroll and see how they fare in Embergard/Spitewood. They inspire individually, similar to before when a friendly fighter attacks an already damaged enemy fighter. Ping cards will be very helpful here, of course, and it's also going to be quite interesting to see how they fare versus other warbands with similar goals like Dread Pageant or the Gort Chosen of Drom. The really good news here is that the attack needn't be successful as long as it is made versus an already damaged fighter. It's still going to be slow though, since they inspire individually, so their uninspired defensive stats will be sort of important to how they handle that slower inspire. And peeking ahead here for a bit, they don't really gain much defensively from inspiring, actually nothing at all, so it's not really important in that regard. Shademark is a representation of their souls being touched by Alguan magic, and thus being able to briefly merge with the mist and the shadows. Each time you make a save roll for a friendly fighter in enemy territory or in a cover hex, that means a delved or flipped treasure token, you can reroll one save dice in the save roll. This is especially good news in the Waystone hexes. If you can get there in enemy territory, a potential 2 dice reroll in the save roll is pretty sweet. Of course, cover hexes way back when they first arrived were way more prevalent with the boards in rotation back then, but it is still a nice buff to have. Given you'll have the surrounded symbol on cover tokens counted as successes plus the reroll from this mechanic, it's pretty much worth getting staggered for in most cases even. Gloomweb hex is usable once in a power step, and means that enemy fighters adjacent to or on feature tokens have -1 save dice in the next turn. Well, this could certainly be very good versus certain warbands. And that being said, versus certain warbands that are sort of one shield or a cross or something like that, it won't do anything. The fact that they don't need to be on the feature token but rather also adjacent makes this a lot more usable versus warbands that aren't necessarily very interested in holding or delving. And you should certainly find an opportunity to play this. I do think it's a bummer though that it doesn't really merge with a later ability that gives our fighter shadow tokens and then makes them count as being in the cover hexes, but because I think this could have been worded to include being adjacent to friendly fights with those tokens. I think it would have made a lot of sense for the warband, but yeah, a bit sad to not see that synergy here, but it's certainly a useful ability. Dark Lamprey is another once per game ability. In the power step, you get to pick an enemy fighter that's not vulnerable within 3 hexes of one of your fighters, and you get to ping them for 1 damage. Also not very exciting design, but it is very pivotal for their inspire. You can't finish people off with this one, but you want to inspire your folks, so it's not really an issue. Impenetrable Darkness is another power step ability once per game. Give each friendly fighter a shadow token, and then your guys with those tokens counts as being a cover token. Yeah, this is another one that's very expected to sort of make it in here, of course. We had a good few cards that did similar things in the old deck, and it's gonna help your survivability out, especially in the early parts where you haven't gotten into enemy territory. If your sort of end goal actually is to go into enemy territory, which it should be given your sort of buffs. Shadow Ambush Last is a search ability you use when a friendly fighter is picked to move. If that fighter is on a cover token, remove that fighter from the battlefield and place them in an empty edge hex in enemy territory. Then give that fighter a move token. So the wording is interesting and sort of confusing here. When you pick a fighter to move, so a charge is a move. So as written, you can then pick an enemy fighter to charge beyond your normal sort of movement capabilities, as long as that fighter also is within your reach if you end up on an edge hex in enemy territory. And you will then end up with both a charge token and a move token in that case. But it should definitely have been worded a bit better in my opinion. It's very good to close down on Prey, of course, but it's still a bit sad that it's just a once per game rather than how it used to be. I can't help feeling a bit underexcited with the War Scroll. Not that it's not very good, it's pretty solid, but it just feels like the typical watering down of first edition warbands rather than a reinvention that sort of like they did with Brothcorn, which I totally love, for example. That is sort of my 2 cents at least, but I might be too harsh here. The enemy territory sort of reroll is obviously something that's going to come up several times during the game. Let's take a ponder at the fighter cards now. Slithale used to be an accurate beast with her malleable ability to give herself cleaver and snare at her heart's content, and it's good to see that has been kept around. She is 4 move, 2 dodge, 4 health and 2 bounty, and hits from range 2, 2 hammers, 2 damage with cleave and snare. Very solid profile all round. Good mobility, good reach, good survivability on 2 dodge on very decent health. Inspired, she adds another hammer and should definitely hit most of her attacks. And yeah, she's flying as well with her Superman cape. Good stuff. Drusilla is 4 move, 1 dodge, 4 health and 2 bounty, and hits from range 2, 3 swords, 2 damage. Inspired, she adds Grievous to that profile. Yeah, that's just straight up Grievous, not crit Grievous or any crap like that. But otherwise she stays the same. Yep, 3 swords isn't amazing as far as accuracy goes, and 1 dodge on both sides is certainly frail even with a potential reroll, but being able to attack for a potential 3 damage from range 2 with sort of a lieutenant type fighter is very, very decent, especially in a non-elite warband. And that fact helps her survivability out a bit, since she doesn't need to risk going all the way into the face of your antagonists and risk missing her range 1 attack with the enemy, then moving in with assist following that. But yeah, on 1 dodge, those 2 bounties are gonna look juicy for her, and the enemy will want to get rid of her, and they will be wary of letting her do too much knife work with that 3 damage inspired side. Valissa is 4 move, 1 dodge, 4 wounds, 1 bounty, and has pretty much the exact same stat line, albeit from range 1. Inspired, she adds crit Grievous to her attack and also adds a second attack for 2 hammers, 1 damage with cleave for a potential finisher move versus shielded fighters, or maybe to make sure to soften up a target for another friendly fighter to inspire off later. Psylark used to be a wizard, alas how the mighty have fallen, but he did pick up an extra health. Good boy. He is by far the coolest model in Warband in my opinion, with his hunched tactical rock assassin pose. He sports 4 move, 1 dodge, 4 wounds on 2 bounty, and he attacks from range 1, 2 hammers, 2 damage, and from range 3, 3 swords, 1 damage. Inspired, he adds nothing but a shitty ensnare on his ranged attack. Yay. Still, his melee attack is pretty tasty, and he's had somewhat of a promotion since our last meeting with him, apart from the wizard stuff there. His ranged attack is mostly for a sort of initial plink to inspire someone subsequently off. Okay, so actually a decent amount of wounds all round here. Good mobility as expected from elves, or elves, however you want to call it, with I guess decent enough accuracy. We have 2 fighters hitting for 3 with a bit of dice luck at least, and that's not too shabby. The 1 dodge pretty much all round is sort of made up for the buffed up health here, and to some extent the War Scroll reroll, so I don't think they'll do too badly, to be fair. So talking pairings and such, their cover hex War Scroll shenanigans should play well into Pillage and Plunder and a deck with some decent ping perhaps to complement. I don't really see them having the defensive power or numbers to play hold all too well, but a more aggressive pairing could certainly work well as well, given the damage output and decent enough accuracy and the fact that they get the defensive rerolls if you go forth. As I said, it's not a War Scroll that excites me particularly, but it's still certainly very, very solid. None of the abilities seems redundant, a waste of space, or bad. It's just not very creative in my opinion. I do miss the cover edge hex hopping a bit, I must say. Once per game isn't really enough there to do it for me, but yeah, really cool models obviously, decent enough stats and solid abilities could still make for a fun experience in practice. What do you think about these guys, and I guess mostly gals? Or they write up your shadowy sleeves? Comment down below and have a great rest of your day. Or maybe for these guys, night. Take care. Bye. Lastly, a big shout out to all my members that help support my content and makes it so much easier for me to produce multiple videos on a weekly basis. Members do get access to the member Discord, get to influence the content, get early access to a ton of videos, as well as get featured in the monthly painting showcase if they want. Member or not, I dearly appreciate the like, the comment and the subscription.